Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 6. I didn't sleep. I just waited on my bed until daybreak, then I made my way downstairs. I have bled. My oldest brother, Edmund, dropped a piece of bread on the floor. My father stood up from his chair as if he had sat on something prickly. Thomas made a gagging noise. I didn't have time to register the others' reactions, but I felt them all. Furious. Are you sure? I stared at my third oldest brother, Paul. Do you want to personally check? There was an uproar. Several more brothers were on their feet. People were arguing now. Several were yelling at me directly. Will he definitely call for an annulment? My father asked above the rest. Charles, a friend of the Becket family, piped up. I have no doubt. On the grounds they did not lie together, my father asked. I beckoned a servant to bring me wine and food. Yes, he will claim it was not consummated. And presumably that she is a bewitcher, added John, his long nose crumpling at the word. I lay back into the wooden-winged chair and put my dirty feet up onto a stool. I watched as my future whirled around me, spat out of different men's mouths. I didn't care. Decide for me. Fix it. I was too tired. Was it consummated? I'm confused, asked someone. I couldn't tell their voices apart anymore. Yes, it was consummated, I said, staring at the ceiling. Are you lying? Demanded my least favourite, Thomas. You watched, you pig. I didn't see the specifics. Oh, my God. We could get a physician to prove she is no longer a virgin, suggested one of the twins. That sounded unpleasant and mortifying. This isn't worth the fuss. Leave the Becket family be. Let him annul the marriage and we will tell him we won't put up a fight if he doesn't defame our family. Murmuring of agreements. The second twin spoke up. Hear, hear. It's not worth saving this marriage. We have good enough connections with the Beckets through my own marriage. What shall we do with her now? Silence. I did not need to be a part of this conversation. I turned to my mother. Her eyes were shut. I'll be in my room, I told her. Nobody acknowledged I had spoken. My feet were filthy. I should have gone to my chamber as I promised. I should have bathed and gotten changed, but I hadn't the energy to get back up the stairs. I sat down, ignoring the servants' stares, and leant my head against the door to the great hall. I could hear my family's anger, their fear, reverberating through the oak. One of my brothers was pacing up and down the hall, probably Edmund. He was husband to Edward's sister. This was awkward for him. I wondered if Edward would tell anyone what had happened last night. I wondered if he would even remember it. Either way, I was unsure he could harm me more than he already had. I would be sent off somewhere now, maybe married to a farmer, or perhaps a nunnery, or maybe I could go to a distant relative in the country and be their child's carer. Whatever would happen, I did not have long left in this house. Nun, nanny, nimwit, whatever I was to become, I would never show my mark to anyone else ever again. I would hide it under layers and layers of dress, and I would continue life as a perfectly normal, albeit disgraced woman. I fell asleep, head dropping suddenly into my own lacking bosom. I did not fight it. The door banged open into my back, shifting me across the floor and nearly flattening me against the stone wall. I made a small noise, but my father didn't realize I was there. My brothers tailed after him, still shouting opinions in his wake. There were so many of them. How come not one was on my side? How come none of them wanted to make sure I was well? I felt my mother's presence in the doorframe. You are blessed, child. My mother had seen me. She noticed everything, though admittedly, she had missed how incredibly unblessed I am. What have they decided? I asked, still pressed between door and wall. Well, she stared in the direction of her recently departed boys. You were very nearly sent to a nunnery. My heart turned over. But that is Catholic and disgraceful. I breathed a slow sigh of relief. I believe they want to send you far away, to a farm, with a boy who requires no dowry. To be married again? I cannot, Mamma. Go to your room, Maude. I stood and stared at her. She'd used my name. Go. I needed to find the smallest space possible. My den under my bed was too big. I needed to sit in my clothes trunk and shut the lid and stay there forever. My coffin. I am so disgraceful. I am so disgusting. I opened the trunk filled with neatly folded underclothes and some of my older dresses. It smelled a lot better than the one at the brothel. I started pulling at the cloth, wrenching the pieces out of the trunk. I was crying out loud. I could hear myself wailing like a banshee. Christ, I was a weak child. I could see my tears, creamy from my face powder, marking the dresses. Shoes were at the bottom. I grabbed a pair and threw them into the unlit hearth. I wondered how long until someone came to tell me to be quiet. Finally, an empty trunk. I got in and curled up and then, careful not to trap my fingers, let the lid close over me. Darkness wound its way around me like a blanket. I exhaled. My tears stopped. I would stay there forever. When I was younger, I had been afraid of a monster that lived in the trunk at the end of my bed, but it was just me. I had ended up the thing I feared. I rolled over onto my side, my shoulder brushing my coffin lid. I was not sure whether my eyes were open or closed, but I felt myself drifting to sleep. The heavens opened. I had been asleep long enough to have been woken up panicked at least half a dozen times, but now light poured into my grave. "What?" I managed, blinking repeatedly. "You're not dead yet." My eyes focused, and I saw the flickering candle eclipsed by my mother's great belly. I sat up. My joints ached. "It is decided, Magdalene. The men want you married off to some lumpish hedge pig on a farm about 10 miles south. Why marry me again? This one won't care about your affliction." I gaped at her. "Fine, he'll care, but he won't divorce you for it. Edward hasn't even decided what he's going to do yet. He's going to divorce you or annul the marriage. Either way, you need a new husband." "I will not go." "You have no choice." "I will not go." Was I condemned to live in a loop of time where all that happened was men stared at my body, revolted and afraid? "We tried to cover the mark with powder, Maude. You are what you are." "No!" She left the room. "No!" Jimmy meowed loudly in my defense. "I wouldn't. It wasn't a question in my mind. I wouldn't be shipped off to a life in the muck with the dirt and the peasants. We hadn't heard from Edward yet, so we didn't know what he would do, but I won't set foot in some poor man's house. A week earlier, I was to be on my way to the fucking Shropshire house with a horde of servants and all the dresses I ever wanted. I was going to court.